Chapters 5 and 6 of Book 3 of Les Misérables, Volume 4 by Victor Hugo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Dave Dwight. Les Misérables, Volume 4 by Victor Hugo, translated by Isabel Florence Hapgood. Book 3, The House in the Rue Plumet. Chapter 5. The Rose Perceives that it is an Engine of War. One day, Cosette chanced to look at herself in her mirror, and she said to herself, "Really?" It seemed to her almost that she was pretty. This threw her in a singularly troubled state of mind. Up to that moment, she had never thought of her face. She saw herself in her mirror, but she did not look at herself. And then she had so often been told that she was homely. Jean Valjean alone said gently, "No, indeed. No, indeed." At all events, Cosette had always thought herself homely, and had grown up in that belief with the easy resignation of childhood. And here, all at once, was her mirror saying to her, as Jean Valjean had said, "No, indeed." That night she did not sleep. What if I were pretty, she thought. How odd it would be if I were pretty. And she recalled those of her companions whose beauty had produced a sensation in the convent, and she said to herself, "What? Am I to be like Mademoiselle So-and-so?" The next morning she looked at herself again, not by accident this time, and she was assailed with doubts. "Where did I get such an idea?" said she. "No, I am ugly." She had not slept well, that was all. Her eyes were sunken and she was pale. She had not felt very joyous on the preceding evening in the belief that she was beautiful, but it made her very sad not to be able to believe in it any longer. She did not look at herself again, and for more than a fortnight she tried to dress her hair with her back turned to the mirror. In the evening, after dinner, she generally embroidered in wool, or did some convent needlework in the drawing-room, and Jean Valjean read beside her. Once she raised her eyes from her work, and she was rendered quite uneasy by the manner in which her father was gazing at her. On another occasion, she was passing along the street, and it seemed to her that someone behind her, whom she did not see, said, "A pretty woman, but badly dressed." "Bah," she thought, "he does not mean me. I am well dressed and ugly." She was then wearing a plush hat and her merino gown. At last, one day when she was in the garden, she heard poor old Toussaint saying, "Do you notice how pretty Cosette is growing, sir?" Cosette did not hear her father's reply. But Toussaint's words caused a sort of commotion within her. She fled from the garden, ran up to her room, flew to the looking-glass. It was 3 months since she had looked at herself, and gave vent to a cry. She had just dazzled herself. She was beautiful and lovely. She could not help agreeing with Toussaint and her mirror. Her figure was formed, her skin had grown white, her hair was lustrous, an unaccustomed splendor had been lighted in her blue eyes. The consciousness of her beauty burst upon her in an instant, like the sudden advent of daylight. Other people noticed it also. Toussaint had said so. It was evidently she of whom the passer-by had spoken. There could no longer be any doubt of that. She descended to the garden again, thinking herself a queen, imagining that she heard the birds singing, though it was winter, seeing the sky gilded, the sun among the trees, flowers in the thickets, distracted, wild, in inexpressible delight. Jean Valjean, on his side, experienced a deep and undefinable oppression at heart. In fact, he had, for some time past, been contemplating with terror that beauty which seemed to grow more radiant every day on Cosette's sweet face. The dawn that was smiling for all was gloomy for him. Cosette had been beautiful for a tolerably long time before she became aware of it herself. But from the very first day, that unexpected light which was rising slowly and enveloping the whole of the young girl's person wounded Jean Valjean's sombre eye. He felt that it was a change in a happy life, a life so happy that he did not dare to move for fear of disarranging something. This man, who had passed through all manner of distresses, who was still all bleeding from the bruises of fate, who had been almost wicked, and who had become almost a saint, who, after having dragged the chains of the galleys, was now dragging the invisible but heavy chain of indefinite misery. This man whom the law had not released from its grasp, and who could be seized at any moment and brought back from the obscurity of his virtue to the broad daylight of public opprobrium. This man accepted all, excused all, pardoned all, and merely asked of Providence, of man, of the law, of society, of nature, of the world, one thing, that Cosette might love him, that Cosette might continue to love him, that God would not prevent the heart of the child from coming to him and from remaining with him. Beloved by Cosette, he felt that he was healed, rested, appeased, loaded with benefits, recompensed, crowned. Beloved by Cosette, it was well with him. He asked nothing more. Had anyone said to him, "Do you want anything better?" he would have answered, "No." God might have said to him, "Do you desire heaven?" and he would have replied, "I should lose by it." Everything which could affect this situation, if only on the surface, made him shudder like the beginning of something new. He had never known very distinctly himself what the beauty of a woman means, but he understood instinctively that it was something terrible. He gazed with terror on this beauty, which was blossoming out ever more triumphant and superb beside him, beneath his very eyes, on the innocent and formidable brow of that child, from the depths of her homeliness, of his old age, of his misery, of his reprobation. He said to himself, "How beautiful she is! What is to become of me?" There, moreover, lay the difference between his tenderness and the tenderness of a mother. What he beheld with anguish, a mother would have gazed upon with joy. The first symptoms were not long in making their appearance. On the very morrow of the day on which she had said to herself, "Decidedly I am beautiful," Cosette began to pay attention to her toilet. She recalled the remark of that passer-by, pretty but badly dressed. The breath of an oracle, which had passed beside her and had vanished, after depositing in her heart one of the two gems which are destined, later on, to fill the whole life of woman, coquetry. Love is the other. With faith in her beauty, the whole feminine soul expanded within her. She conceived a horror for her merinos, and shame for her plush hat. Her father had never refused her anything. She had once acquired the whole science of the bonnet, the gown, the mantle, the boot, the cuff, the stuff which is in fashion, the color which is becoming, that science which makes of the Parisian woman something so charming, so deep, and so dangerous. The words heady woman were invented for the Parisienne. In less than a month, little Cosette, in the tabac of the Rue de Babylone, was not only one of the prettiest, but one of the best dressed women in Paris, which means a great deal more. She would have liked to encounter her passer-by to see what he would say, and to teach him a lesson. The truth is that she was ravishing in every respect, and that she distinguished the difference between a bonnet from Giraud and one from Herbaut in the most marvelous way. Jean Valjean watched these ravages with anxiety. He who felt that he could never do anything but crawl, walk at the most, beheld wings sprouting on Cosette. Moreover, from the mere inspection of Cosette's toilet, a woman would have recognized the fact that she had no mother. Certain little proprieties, certain special conventionalities were not observed by Cosette. A mother, for instance, would have told her that a young girl does not dress in damask. The first day that Cosette went out in her black damask gown and mantle and her white crape bonnet, she took Jean Valjean's arm, gay, radiant, rosy, proud, dazzling. "Father," she said, "how do you like me in this guise?" Jean Valjean replied in a voice which resembled the bitter voice of an envious man, "Charming." He was the same as usual during their walk. On their return home, he asked Cosette, "Won't you put on the other gown and bonnet again? You know the ones I mean." This took place in Cosette's chamber. Cosette turned towards the wardrobe where her cast-off schoolgirl's clothes were hanging. "That disguise," said she. "Father, what do you want me to do with it? Oh, no, the idea! I shall never put on those horrors again. With that machine on my head, I have the air of Madame Mad Dog.